been a strange thing these last days. I've been joyful and happy. I've been sorrow-filled. I've been embarrassed. I've been ashamed. I've been heartbroken. I hardly even know where to start. I guess it began on Thursday night. We gathered with our Lord to celebrate the Passover. It was such a good time. Talking, sharing stories, praying, laughing, telling jokes. Philip, poor Philip, he has to take the part that the littlest one says in the Passover. You know, why is this night different than any other night? He hates that. We tease him unmercifully. But then, in the middle of the Passover, Jesus got up from the table and he went over to the serving station, and he grabbed a towel and he wrapped it around his waist, and he grabbed a pitcher and a basin, and Jesus began to wash feet. I mean, the master doing the work of a slave. And when he got to me, I told him, Lord, I will have no part of this. But Jesus has that way of kind of looking you right through you almost. And he looked at me, then, Simon, if I do not wash you, you will have no part in me. Then, Lord, not just my feet, but my hands, my head, my everything. Sometimes I speak before I think. And then Jesus began to change the words of the Passover. I mean, and this is the Passover. This is the feast that has held Israel together through Exodus, through trial, through captivity. The one thing that never changed, that you could always count on. And now Jesus was changing even that. He took the bread of affliction, and the unleavened bread, and he handed it to us, said, "This is my body, which is given for you." That was shocking. And then later on in the meal, he takes the fourth cup, the cup of salvation, the cup that has recounted God's saving deeds throughout the generation, and said, "Take this and receive it, for this is the cup of my blood, which is to be shed for you and for all, for the forgiveness of sins. As often as you do this, it will be a remembrance of me." I didn't understand what he meant. I get glimpses since then, but I don't know. But one thing I do know, someone was going to betray him. And the Lord himself said so. So I signaled to John to find out who it was, and John asked, and the Lord said, "The one to whom I give the piece of bread dipped in the sup," said that would be the one. And he looked kind of at all of us. And then he handed it to Judas. "Be quick about what you must do." And Judas got up, and it was true. He betrayed the Lord. It was his friend. How could he betray him? How could he hand him over knowing what he was going to do? If I ever see him again. And things got a little sadder after that. Jesus began to talk about going, and where he was going we could not follow, and we would not be able to follow. And I said, "Lord," said, "I will follow you wherever you go." He gave me that look again. "Simon, really? You'll follow me every place?" "Yes, Lord, I will. I will follow you even to death." "Simon Peter, I tell you, before the cock crows 3 times, you will deny even knowing me." "Lord, not I. I will follow you everywhere." How did he know? How did he know? After the meal was over, we marched down from that upper room past Pilate's house there, and then down to the Kidron Valley and across that to the Garden of Gethsemane. It was Jesus' favorite place to pray. And we sat down there like we always did, and then he told us, "Can you stay here while I go over there and pray?" And it was a simple request, just to stay awake and to pray, and yet our hearts were kind of heavy. And Judas was gone. We didn't know what that meant. And the food was so good, and the wine was even better. And before I know it, I was, and the Lord wakes me up, "Simon, stay awake, that you not be tested." "Okay, Lord, I got this. And then the next thing I know, I'm woken up. And it's the sound of a crowd approaching from Jerusalem. And they have torches, and there's soldiers with them. And there in the front is Judas, leading them all. And he comes right there. He knows right where Jesus prays. He comes right there. And then he comes up to the Lord and embraces him, Rabbi, and gives him a kiss. And if it was some kind of signal, the guards began to spring into action. So I grabbed the sword and I swung, and I kind of missed, and I cut off the ear of a servant. And Jesus, without missing a beat, just reaches down and cures him. Simon Peter, put down that sword. Those who live by the sword will die by the sword. But Lord, I just want to protect you. I just want to keep you safe. Simon, those who live by the sword will die by the sword. But. And then we ran. We ran because we didn't know if they would take us next. I got my courage back after a little bit, knowing that they weren't chasing me. And I knew where they would take him next, up to Caiaphas' house there on the hill. We'd passed him on the way down. And so I got as close as I could in the courtyard. He was maybe 50 yards away. And, oh, God, there I did what I'm most ashamed of. There was a little girl, and she couldn't have been any taller than this, maybe 10 years old, and we were warming ourselves kind of around the fire, and she was there too, and she kept kind of looking at me and wondered, and finally said, you were with that man over there. I recognize you. Oh, no, I don't know him at all. I don't know the man. Really, I don't. And I kind of scooched a little bit back from the flames there, but she kept looking and said, no, really, your accent, it gives you away. You're one of that man's followers. Oh, no, I really am not. I am not his follower, honest, I am not. And then she started talking a few more, said, remember him? He was the guy in the garden with the sword. You are one of that man's followers. I don't know him. And my Lord saw across the court, he heard my voice, and he saw, and he looked right at me with that voice, like, oh. And my heart just broke. I swore I would never betray him, and yet I done just what Judas did. If only I could tell him that I was just afraid, Lord. I didn't want to, I was, and I'll never have the chance to say how sorry I am, how much. So they waited to the morning till Caiaphas woke up, and then Caiaphas sent him to Pilate, and Pilate sent him to Herod, and Herod sent him back to Pilate for these kind of mock trials. And then Pilate, in this, as if he was like some Roman god, stood in front of the whole crowd and said, it is the custom that on your feast day I release to you a prisoner of your choice. So shall I release to you Barabbas, the insurrectionist, the murderer? Or shall I release to you this Jesus, the king of the Jews? Jesus, Barabbas. Gee, Barabbas. No, Jesus, Barabbas. Give us Barabbas. So be it. As if my voice didn't count, and I wanted to make up. And then Pilate, as if he could just like wash his hands of the whole thing, just does his oblation and then hands him off after ordering him to be scourged. What happens next is pretty predictable. The soldiers torment him after they whip him half to death in the scourging, and they put a crown of thorns on his head as if, which adds just more pain to him, and they kick him and they beat him and they spit him. They put a cloak on him and then they rip it off, which tears the scabs already forming. And then they load the crossbeam on his shoulders so heavy, and they make him carry it through the streets of Jerusalem, step by step, painful step. He staggers. He falls a couple times. The people jeer at him. They kick, and he gets back up, and he falls again, and finally they get somebody to help him from the field, Simon, and eventually they get up to the hill called Golgotha. And I know what will happen next. I can't bear to look, but I know it. I can see it in my mind that they lay him down and they pull the one arm out, and then bam, 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 with a cry of pain with each nail as it's driven into his wrist. Bam, 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 and another shriek of pain. Bam, as they nail his knees or his feet to the cross. Each time with this scream from the heart of Jesus that rips my heart out with him. And then they raise him up and put him into the hole with another shriek as it jolts his body. And there he hung. My Savior, my life. There he hung. The Roman soldiers had him put a sign. They hooted when they saw Jesus, the King of the Jews. Some of the Jewish nobles came by and said, "Oh, so you're the Messiah." Said, "Save yourself. You saved others. How come you can't save yourself? If you really are the King of the Jews, then come down off of the cross, then we'll believe." Yeah, I thought not. I thought not. Jesus hung there a long time, it seemed, and each breath becomes more difficult to make. You see, on the cross, you don't die from the wounds in the hand and the feet or anything else. You die because eventually you can't breathe. Your stomach muscles just aren't meant to breathe like this for a long period of time. And in fact, to breathe, you eventually have to push against the nails in your hands and your feet, and that causes more pain as you try to gasp for air, and then the pain jolts through, and again Jesus kept breathing, and I couldn't bear to be close to him. I couldn't see that agony. But John was there. He had the courage, and with John brought Mary, and no mother should have to see their son die. Not anyway, and not like that. And Jesus raises himself and said, "Son, behold your mother. Mother, behold your son." And John took Mary into his household from that point on. And he led her away from that point on. It was getting close, I could tell. The breaths were further and further apart, and then something changed in Jesus' face, and you knew he had something else to say. And so once again he raises himself and said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." I couldn't believe it. On the cross, dying like that, being jeered about, and he asked Father to forgive them. And maybe there's hope for my transgression there. Maybe there's a hope for me in that. Could there be? And then the last time. "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." And then he died. Oh, my Savior, he died. Oh, and my life will never be the same. It was getting late. Joseph of Arimathea, a disciple, went to Pilate and asked permission to take the body down. Pilate was surprised he had died so quickly, but he granted it, and so they took the body down, and then they laid it in Mary's arms. No mother should have to hold their son dead in their arms. And then they wrapped him quickly in the burial tombs and took him to Joseph's tomb, which was nearby. And then they rolled the stone down in front of the tomb, and then it was dark, and my life was dark, as if all the light has gone out of it. All the light was gone as Jesus is in the tomb. What happens next? I wish I knew. The others are asking me, Simon Peter, me, the big shot, me, the one who betrayed him 3 times after I promised I wouldn't, what to do next. I don't know. I just think of that tomb and Jesus there laying in it. The tomb. Pilate orders a guard to come and watch the tomb. And really? Why that? I mean, people don't rise from the dead. They don't rise from the dead? What was that? That time on the mountain when James and John and I were there and Jesus was transfigured and the voice came and Jesus said that the Son of Man must suffer greatly at the hands of the chief priests and the elders and the scribes and be put to death and on the third day that he would rise again. On the third day he would rise again. I don't know about you, but I got to check out that tomb.